Hi, and welcome along to our condensed version of the webinar run earlier this month on conducting RPL like a boss. This is an info session aimed at the new micro-credential that we're releasing this month. So please enjoy what we cover here. There's some interesting statistics, some ideas behind why RPL is so important, and a bit of a look inside the particular micro-credential to see if it is of value to you or somebody you work with. So enjoy, and we hope to hear from you soon. So I wanted to start with just this single slide saying, why is it more relevant today than ever? And I'll share a number of statistics with you as we go, just to sort of put a framework around why RPL is, I'm going to say, the forefront of our minds at the moment, especially since the changeover to the new standards last month as well. So things are changing in the work environment, and definitely faster than ever. We just have to say the words AI and we all start to shiver. So one of the themes of the recent National Skills Week in 2025 was that skills are currency. So what you bring to the table are the sets of overlapping skills that bring value to yourself and others. So just having a single qualification to demonstrate expertise is fading from view a little bit. So what RPL is it's the fast-tracked way to recognize those skills and therefore, dare I say it, prove your value. So people are looking at how they can get their skills recognized in a way that then shows their value to their employer or their clients if they're self-employed. According to the NCVER, so if you're not familiar with them, the National Centre for Vocational Education Research, 40% of Australian workers hold skills that are not formally recognized. So that's 4 in 10 people. That's crazy. In 2025, with the new standards released, RTOs have been placed on increased emphasis on things like quality, student outcomes, and what they call refined assessment practices. So RPL is under the microscope. And I would really like to say that RPL is not a shortcut. It is a smart route, though. So the talking point here is that before we dive into the overview, let's understand this opportunity. RPL is no longer just a tick of compliance. It's what I would call a strategic edge for trainers, assessors, and definitely the RTOs that run RPLs well. So what is it? Just so we have the definition nice and clear in our head. It is assessment without additional training. It assesses skills, experience, and knowledge against the requirements of a specific unit of competency. So it's ideal for people who may be career switching, maybe they're mature age learners, workers with on-the-job expertise, and are looking for ways of then, as I mentioned before, verifying or validating their skills in a formal way to actually work properly. RPL must be valid, it must be reliable, flexible, and fair. These are all the principles of assessment that you're probably very used to, or it just won't stand up to audit. In the foundation qualification for our industry, the TAE Cert 4, RPL in assessment is only mentioned once in the core unit of the 412, the ASS 412, where it talks about in, I think it's performance criteria 2.1, get me, I hope I'm correct there, where it says identify where recognition of prior learning and or reasonable adjustment is required. And then, of course, in the assessment or performance evidence, you have to assess someone using RPL. So it is utilized in there. And then again, as we mentioned, in the validation unit where an RPL must be validated. The depth in which most providers go into RPL at this point varies greatly, but it's a good start. So I think if you've got your certificate for and you are trained by a reputable training organization, then you should have a fair idea of not only how to recognize where RPL is required, but also conduct it in a reasonable way. Time this was actually surveyed, 270,000 RPL assessments were conducted in a year. 1 in 3 were found as non-compliant by ASCOT, 1 in 3. And what does that mean? Well, let's find out. The cost of non-compliance. Inadequate RPL processes are a key trigger for an ASCOT intervention. There can be financial penalties, cancelled qualifications, of course, damage to the RTO's reputation. In a real case, as I've thrown up here, an RTO lost its registration due to what they call systemic RPL failures. And we can discuss what that means in a minute. And over the last 5 years, several Australian RTOs, including organisations, this is all just public records, so I'm not calling anyone out here, but RTOs like EduVet, AECC, Elite, and others have all been deregistered and had thousands of qualifications revoked due directly to failures in their assessment and RPL systems. So these organizations allegedly failed to conduct compliant and evidence-based RPL. So when you're teaching things like this, Alan and others, then you've got to be sure that someone who's signing off an RPL is aware of the weight that carries. It's incredibly important. So they not only failed to provide proper evidence-based RPL, but they also lacked qualified assessors. So what is a qualified assessor for an RPL? They offered no gap training. They just ticked and flicked. And they often relied on misleading marketing, saying, get through this, it's going to be cheaper and quicker. Because of this, ASQA has intensified the regulatory scrutiny, ensuring such providers were removed and students were protected. And more importantly, the industry that they were meant to support is not negatively impacted by these results. So poor RPL actually hurts students. They're awarded credentials that they can't necessarily safely apply, and they could be revoked in some cases, as we've seen through history in the last few years. If we have RPL trained assessors, so this is people with their Cert 4, but then that next level above as well. So having RPL trained people within your organization reduces audit stress. It builds internal capability. So you've got an expert in your team who you can recall or call upon regarding any questions you have around RPL. It definitely gives learners faster pathways and greater satisfaction, knowing that they have a process there that they can follow, not just easily, but confidently. And it opens up new revenue streams because corporate clients love structured RPL pathways, because just like that very first stat we shared, so many of them have existing experience and knowledge and skills that haven't been recognized yet. So offering them that is a great revenue stream as well. RPL is a nice stat. RPL trained assessors, according to the NCVER, are 35% more likely to lead assessment classes or validation sessions within their RTO. In other words, they become real assets to the organization. So not only do they undertake their own tasks and skills, with more skill, I should say, but they become more valuable to the whole organization. And the survey suggests that in most RTOs, only one person is confident enough to handle RPL. I mean, that person could be you. But generally speaking, especially in private RTOs, obviously TAFEs have several people across their larger bandwidth. Now I'm going to talk about this concept of a micro-credential and why we've chosen to offer this as a way to basically make experts out there in the process of RPL. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but there is actually a framework for micro-credentials in Australia. It's defined by the national framework. A micro-credential has to be outcomes-based. It has to be responsive to industry need, tailored to support lifelong learning, and transparent and accessible. It can be anything from one unit to anything up to a skill set. It can still be referred to as a micro-credential. So what we have tried to create with a micro-credential aimed at the diploma level unit is that it is a Microsoft, don't know where that came from, micro-credential that enables you to plan, coordinate, and lead RPL assessment. So it's very much outcomes-based. You can make evidence-based decisions, auditable decisions as well, and you can support your candidates in gathering the right kind of evidence. So definitely outcomes-based. As far as being responsive to industry, having a micro-credential like this has been lauded on platforms like LinkedIn very recently. RTO managers, CEOs, directors, other trainers and assessors have all said, there's no current micro-credential being offered out there for RPL. So that's what we're launching today. We're very much responsive to the industry. We also help participants work within what they would call a quality assurance framework, which, if you're again aware of the new RTO standards, is essential for operating in the current compliance environment. As far as tailoring to support lifelong learning, I love this because people who've done diplomas in training assessment or vocational education, they can just do this as a single micro-credential. They don't have to go back and redo their entire diploma or anything like that. So it really supports that concept of lifelong learning. And it's also a natural step for those who have Cert 4s as well. If they've got their Cert 4 and they're out there just like yourself who might be doing RPLs, but they just feel like they need more information or need to have their experience recognized, then again, this fills that slot. And as far as being accessible, well, I hope to show you that in a moment. The micro-credential is very much a how-to guide. We do cover the unit of competency in its entirety, but we try to make it very practical as well. On the screen here are just the 5 steps to a basic compliant RPL, from initially contacting and sharing information with the student through to understanding that student's backgrounds and goals. So many of us don't do that when we're talking about RPL. We just rush in and just say, okay, you need to give me all this stuff. Okay. And that's not the way to conduct RPL. You really have to understand where that student's coming from. Currently, I'm conducting a number of RPLs, and one of those people is a CPA. She has an MBA, and she's studying her doctorate in finance and economics. So she's all about economics. So when she wanted to get a diploma of vocational education, there was only one stream that made sense, which was the vet leadership stream. And within that stream, there are 5 elective units that she could undertake that all covered things like around audit. So it was perfect for her. So if I'd gone just down the normal stream and said, you need to do all this with training and assessment, it would have been completely convenient for her and very hard for her to actually achieve. So listening to the candidates' backgrounds is that second step. The way we actually gather evidence, how we collect it, is also very important. Generally speaking, we talk about the sorts of evidence that someone can provide to us, and then we say, just go forth, find that evidence and send it in. Now, that's great, but without some guidance, people can get very confused. What is a screenshot of an email supposed to look like? Or how am I supposed to get a third-party report done? Who's going to do it for me? So it's about making sure that's understood. The assessment plan itself, the templates, and this is the important part, the templates around an RPL kit. And I'll touch on those in a second, but that's a big part of doing this micro-credential. We actually supply you all the templates, so they're done. And you can just incorporate them in your own organization or utilize your own ones and make sure they're compliant. And then support and resources. This is the support and resources for the RPL candidate, not so much you. Okay. So what sort of support and resources could you give to that candidate? One of the great things I do is I give filled out examples to them. Okay. This is what an example might look like. So when they're trying to collect their evidence, they can see what sorts of things they need to provide. So I find that a really good tool. We're officially kicking off on Monday, okay? So although it's an online course and it's self-paced, I am going to have a bit of an intro to it on Monday. So in other words, if you want to sign up or recommend anybody does sign up for this, I will do it like a course introduction on that day. And the fee there is all inclusive of all the templates that you get and, of course, the assessment and the statement of attainment should you finish correctly. So it's the whole thing. And now the fun part, what does it look like? Because this is self-paced, it has to be online. And when it's online, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And I'm sure you'd agree with this. So when you're studying online, you need to study in a way that suits not your learning style, but the preferences, the way you like to receive information. So we've thought about this. Now, we do have an online learning management system. And here's a nice little screenshot of this particular micro-credential. And you'll see in there, we have a student forum. Why do we have that? The research suggests that a student who interacts with other students whilst they're going through any online learning is 80+% more engaged in that learning. Isn't that ridiculous? 80% plus more engaged in that learning, just if they have someone else to talk to. The next thing is we have online tutorials. When you click on that link in the learning management system, a pop-up comes up, and I'll show you that pop-up in a second. And it is all video-based, very much like, say, a LinkedIn Learning. We then have additional resources over and above what you'd normally need to study this, but they are there for you to then do some further reading. So if you really want to get a good grip on some of this, we've got some government documentation, we've got something from industry professionals overseas as well that really understand what RPL is. And then we have our assessments, of course, a knowledge test and the assignments. So this is what it looks like when you go into the online tutorials, all video-based. You're going to love this. So you click on it, there's an introduction to the program. You can scroll down and access the videos from this front page, or you can just say, oh, let's start learning. And when you start learning, this is what it looks like. So you have fully narrated videos. Under those videos, you have text content, images, things like that. So it supports people who like listening, people who like watching, and importantly, people who like doing. So on this, you might be able to see my mouse on here just hover above those overview and comments buttons here. When applicable, there's also another button that says exercise files. So as you're going through the video, we might have an exercise file that you can download and complete while you're watching the video. So it helps those kinesthetic learners as well, the ones who like to be doing something to learn. So you're watching, you're listening, you're reading, you're writing potentially. So we're really kicking all the goals as far as the individual parts of learning go. And on top of that, every single video, because it's based on YouTube, we have the closed captions available as well. So if you're studying on a train, if you're hearing impaired, you can just read the captions, and they're all, I've checked them all, and so far there's no spelling errors. You know how sometimes the closed captions can get it wrong? So far they're spot on. So that's it in a nutshell. I did want to only spend half an hour just covering this and then maybe getting some questions and answering those. But I will share this last slide for you. And if you'd like to take a little screenshot of that, this is just the enrollment link, Alan and others. If you are keen to enroll and get a start on Monday, it is self-paced. So basically you can get a start and then it can take you up to 6 weeks to complete, or you can get it done within a few days if you're right on top of it. But the end result is you end up doing or creating an RPL kit and doing 3 RPLs as a part of it, as well as a validation. So it's a very comprehensive micro-credential. And of course, it's 1 unit less that you have to do of your diploma.